The Calvari Empire had ruled the Outer Rim for 3,000 years without challenge. Their crystalline warships glittered like deadly jewels as they carved through space, leaving behind the charred remains of civilizations that dared resist. Commander Zelkris stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion, his four eyes scanning the tactical display with practiced confidence. Before him floated the holographic image of a small blue and green world, primitive and isolated at the edge of known space. Another insignificant world, Zelkris muttered, his mandibles clicking in amusement. The humans. Intelligence reports they barely achieved faster than light travel 2 of their generations ago. Their weapons are projectile-based. Chemical propulsion. How quaint. His subordinate, Lieutenant Vrask, shifted nervously behind him. Commander, there is something unusual in their transmissions. They seem to be evacuating one of their orbital stations. Fear, Zelkris said dismissively. They know we are coming. The Galactic Council made it clear that Earth must submit to Calvari authority or face consequences. We are those consequences. He gestured toward the communications officer. Send them our standard ultimatum. Unconditional surrender within 6 of their hours, or we begin orbital bombardment of their coastal cities. The message was transmitted across all human frequencies. For a moment there was silence. Then a response crackled through the speakers. The voice was calm, almost unnervingly so, with a strange accent that mangled several galactic standard words. This is Admiral Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. We have received your ultimatum and reviewed your terms. There was a pause. We respectfully decline. Zelkris's mandibles spread wide in what passed for a Calvari grin. Respectfully decline? Do they not understand what we can do to their world? We have shattered planets. We have boiled oceans. We have turned entire star systems into graveyards. Sir, Vrask interrupted, his voice carrying a note of concern. They are transmitting coordinates, a rendezvous point in deep space beyond their moon. They wish to meet us in open space. Zelkris laughed, a harsh chittering sound. Even better. We will not have to waste ammunition on their pathetic orbital defenses. Set course immediately. Let us teach these humans the price of defiance. The Calvari fleet, consisting of 18 heavy cruisers and the massive flagship, began moving away from Earth. Each ship was a marvel of engineering, equipped with plasma cannons that could melt through titanium like butter, and shields that had never been penetrated in recorded history. The fleet had destroyed 47 civilizations. Earth would be the 48th. As they approached the designated coordinates, Zelkris noticed something odd on the sensor displays. There was a massive power signature ahead, larger than anything in the human database. It was sitting perfectly still in the void, waiting. What is that? He demanded. A station? A moon they moved into position? The sensor officer's translator struggled to convey his confusion. Commander, it is a vessel. A single vessel. But the readings cannot be correct. It masses more than our entire fleet combined. On the view screen, the object came into focus. It was not sleek like Calvari ships or elegant like the vessels of other spacefaring races. It was brutal and functional, a massive rectangular structure covered in armor plating that looked thick enough to build cities upon. Gun turrets bristled from every surface, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. The ship was painted a dark gray, and along its hull in white letters large enough to be seen from millions of kilometers away was a single word. Vengeance. That, Vrask whispered, is impossible. Nothing that large should be able to move. The power requirements alone would exceed the output of a small star. Zelkris felt something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. Doubt, but he crushed it immediately. Size means nothing. It is 1 ship against 18. Scan for weak points. Charge all weapons. We will reduce this monstrosity to scrap metal. The communications channel opened again. Admiral Chen's voice returned, still calm. Commander Zelkris of the Calvari Empire. You are looking at the UEDS Vengeance, our latest battleship design. She took us 12 years to build and represents everything humanity learned from our first contact with your species. When you destroyed the colony on New Hope and killed 3 million civilians, you taught us a valuable lesson. And what lesson was that? Zelkris sneered. That mercy is a luxury reserved for peaceful times. You wanted to see human weapons? You wanted to test human resolve? You are about to receive both in abundance. There was a pause, and when Chen spoke again, his voice carried the weight of restrained fury. I am obligated to offer you the same chance you gave us. Turn back now, leave this system and never return. You have 60 seconds to comply. Zelchris slammed his appendage against the command console. Fire everything! I want that ship torn apart. Show these primitives the power of the Kalvari Empire. The 18 cruisers opened fire simultaneously. Plasma bolts, brilliant and devastating, streaked across the void toward the human battleship. Each shot carried enough energy to vaporize a city block. The barrage was so intense it looked like a solid wall of light crossing the darkness of space. The shots struck the Vengeance's shields and stopped. The energy dissipated against an invisible barrier, absorbed and redirected harmlessly into space. Not a single bolt reached the ship's hull. Impossible, Zelchris breathed. Our weapons have never been fully stopped before. Increase power to maximum. Focus all fire on a single point. The Kalvari fleet concentrated their assault on the battleship's forward section. The space around the human vessel turned into a hellstorm of energy. For 30 seconds, they poured everything they had into that single target. The shields flickered once, just once. Then the Vengeance returned fire. The sound that reached them through the ship's hull was unlike anything Zelchris had ever heard. Not the clean whistle of plasma weapons or the hum of energy beams. This was thunder. Primal, terrifying thunder that seemed to shake reality itself. The human ship's main guns fired. They were not energy weapons. They were cannons, massive beyond comprehension, that fired solid projectiles accelerated to relativistic speeds. Each shell was the size of a small building, and each carried enough kinetic energy to crack a moon. The first Kalvari cruiser simply ceased to exist. The shell passed through its shields as if they were not there, through the hull, through the internal structures, and out the other side in a microsecond. The ship broke apart, explosions blooming along its length as atmosphere vented and reactors went critical. The second and third cruisers tried to evade, but they were too close together. A single shell from one of the Vengeance's secondary batteries struck between them. The shockwave from the impact tore both ships in half. Evasive maneuvers. Zelchris screamed. All ships scatter. Return to Earth orbit. But the human battleship was already moving. Despite its enormous mass, it accelerated with impossible speed, positioning itself between the Kalvari fleet and their escape route. More guns fired. Turrets that seemed too numerous to count tracked targets with mechanical precision. The Vengeance was not just a ship. It was a floating fortress, a weapons platform designed for a single purpose: overwhelming destruction. Every system, every component, every meter of armor was built to bring maximum violence to bear on any threat to humanity. Another cruiser exploded. Then another. The cavalry ships were desperately trying to fight back, but their weapons barely scratched the human vessel's shields. Meanwhile, every shot the Vengeance fired found its mark with surgical precision. Zelchris watched his fleet die. In less than 5 minutes, he had lost half his ships. The others were scattering in panic, all discipline forgotten in the face of this mechanical nightmare. Commander, Vrask said quietly, we need to retreat. We need to warn the Empire. For the first time in his career, Zelchris agreed with the suggestion to flee. Navigation, plot a jump to. An alert screamed across all consoles. The Vengeance had fired something different. Not shells, but missiles. Hundreds of them, each leaving a trail of white fire as they streaked toward the remaining Kalvari ships. Point defense. Shoot them down, Zelchris ordered. They destroyed many of the missiles, but not enough. Not nearly enough. The ones that reached their targets didn't explode on impact. They drilled through the hulls first, penetrating deep into the ships before detonating. Nuclear fire bloomed inside the Kalvari vessels, tearing them apart from within. When the light faded, only 3 ships remained intact. The Eternal Dominion and 2 escorts, damaged and barely functional. Admiral Chen's voice returned. You have 10 seconds to surrender. After that, I will consider you hostile and resume fire. 10-9-8. Surrender? Zelchris could barely process the word. The Kalvari Empire did not surrender. They were the conquerors, the overlords, the supreme power of this region of space. 7, 6, 5. But they were also in this moment utterly defeated. We surrender, Zelchris whispered. Then louder. We surrender. Cease fire! The countdown stopped at 2 seconds. The boarding pods launched from the Vengeance without ceremony or warning. They were crude things compared to Kalvari technology, just reinforced tubes with primitive chemical thrusters, but they moved with purpose and speed. Zelchris watched them approach on his flickering view screen, his mandibles trembling with barely suppressed rage and humiliation. Around him, the bridge crew worked in shocked silence, trying to restore power to damaged systems while avoiding their commander's gaze. "Should we resist?" Frask asked quietly, his weapon hand hovering near his sidearm. "With what?" Zelchris gestured at the devastation visible through the windows. 15 of his ships were now debris fields, expanding clouds of metal and frozen atmosphere. They demonstrated that our shields are worthless and our hulls are paper. If we resist, they will simply finish what they started. The pods clamped onto the hull with metallic thuds that reverberated through the ship. Zelchris heard cutting torches activating, then the screech of metal being forced apart. His people were scrambling to seal bulkheads and evacuate the affected sections, but it was pointless. The humans were coming in whether he liked it or not. The first human soldiers entered through the breach wearing full armor that made them look even more imposing than their already considerable size. They moved with military precision, weapons raised, scanning every corner for threats. Their armor was thick and practical, covered in cameras and sensors. It reminded Zelchris of the armor worn by shock troops. But these humans moved like they expected combat at any second. The lead soldier pulled off his helmet, revealing a scarred face with dark skin and eyes that seemed to catalog every detail instantly. "I am Captain Rodriguez, United Earth Marine Corps. By the authority granted to me under the Terran Military Code and the laws of war, I am here to take command of this vessel and accept your formal surrender." Zelchris forced himself to stand straight, maintaining what dignity he could. "I am Commander Zelchris of the Calvari Imperial Navy. My ship is yours." The words tasted like poison, but he spoke them clearly. There was no point in false pride when you were utterly defeated. Rodriguez nodded slowly. "Your crew will be confined to designated areas under guard. You will provide us with complete access to your computer systems, navigation logs, and communication records. Any resistance will be met with immediate and overwhelming force. Do you understand?" "I understand," Zelchris said. Then, because he had to know, "How? How did you build something like that?" He gestured vaguely in the direction of where the Vengeance waited, its guns still trained on the 3 surviving Calvari ships. For a moment, Rodriguez's expression softened slightly. "You really want to know, all right? When your people destroyed New Hope Colony 12 years ago, you made a mistake. You left survivors. 300,000 people managed to evacuate before you glassed the planet. They made it back to Earth and they told everyone what happened. They described how your ships appeared without warning, how you demanded surrender, and when the colonists asked for time to consider, you opened fire." Rodriguez walked to the viewport looking out at the debris field. "You killed 3 million civilians, Commander. 3 million people who were just trying to build a new life on a distant world. Men, women, children, all gone in an afternoon because the Calvary Empire wanted to demonstrate its power." Zelchris said nothing. What could he say? It was all true. The destruction of New Hope had been ordered from the highest levels of the Empire as a demonstration to other species. Submit or be destroyed. That was the Calvary way. "So we decided to send a message of our own," Rodriguez continued. "Humanity pooled resources like never before. Every nation, every corporation, every individual contributed. We took our entire gross planetary product for 12 years and poured it into 3 things. The best shields we could design, the best armor we could forge, and the biggest damn guns we could build." He turned back to face Zelchris. "The Vengeance masses 8 million tons. Her armor is layered composites that can withstand nuclear detonations. Her shields use technology we reverse-engineered from captured Calvari equipment and improved upon. And her main guns? They fire shells made of depleted uranium and tungsten carbide, each one weighing 50 tons, accelerated to 20% of light speed." Zelchris felt his blood turn cold. 20% of light speed. At that velocity, the kinetic energy alone would be devastating beyond imagination. "You built a ship specifically to fight us." "We built a ship specifically to kill you," Rodriguez corrected. "There's a difference. This isn't an exploration vessel or a cargo hauler that we armed for defense. The Vengeance has one purpose: destroy anyone who threatens humanity. She carries enough ammunition to level continents and enough firepower to fight an entire fleet by herself." He smiled, but there was no humor in it. "You wanted to know what humans are capable of when we are angry? Now you know." A subordinate approached Rodriguez and whispered something in his ear. The captain nodded and turned back to Zelchris. "Admiral Chen wants to speak with you. You will come with us to the shuttle bay. Your command staff will remain here under guard." The walk through his own ship was humiliating. Zelchris passed crew members who looked at him with expressions ranging from shock to contempt. He had led them into battle against a superior enemy without proper intelligence or preparation. He had cost them their comrades, their ships, and their pride. By the time they reached the shuttle bay, Zelchris felt older than his years. The human shuttle was as brutally functional as everything else they built. No elegant curves or artistic touches, just a rectangular box with engines and armor. The interior was cramped and uncomfortable, designed for efficiency rather than comfort. Zelchris was strapped into a seat that was too small for his frame, and then they were launching, accelerating toward the Vengeance with stomach-churning force. As they approached, Zelchris got his first real look at the human battleship. It was even more intimidating up close. The gun turrets alone were larger than most vessels he had commanded in his career. He counted at least 40 of the main batteries and hundreds of secondary weapons. Point defense systems covered every angle, and missile tubes dotted the hull like poxmarks. This was not a ship. This was a mobile weapons platform, a fortress that could move between stars and bring overwhelming violence to any enemy. They docked in a cavernous hangar bay that could have held his entire surviving fleet, with room to spare. As Zelchris was escorted off the shuttle, he saw rows upon rows of smaller craft, fighters, bombers, assault shuttles, all maintained and ready for deployment. The humans had not just built a battleship. They had built a carrier capable of projecting force across an entire star system. Admiral Chen was waiting in a conference room that was surprisingly plain. The walls were bare metal, the table was simple steel, and the chairs were purely functional. Chen himself was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. He looked like someone who had carried a heavy burden for a long time. "Sit," Chen said, gesturing to a chair. It was not a request. Zelchris sat. "I'm going to tell you something, Commander Zelchris, and I want you to listen carefully because your life and the lives of your crew depend on your understanding." Chen leaned forward, his hands clasped on the table. "Humanity does not want war with the Kelvari Empire. We never did. We were content to explore, to trade, to learn from other species. But you forced our hand. The Empire will not tolerate this defeat," Zelchris said quietly. "They will send more ships. Bigger fleets, let them," Chen replied calmly. "The Vengeance is not the only ship of her class. She is the first. We have 2 more under construction, and we have begun designing even larger vessels. By the time your Empire musters a fleet large enough to threaten us, we will have an armada ready to meet them." Zelchris stared at the human admiral. "You are talking about total war. Do you understand what that means? The Kelvari Empire spans hundreds of worlds. Our fleets number in the thousands. Even if you can build more ships like this, you cannot stand against the full might of the Empire." Chen smiled, and it was a terrible thing to see. "Commander, do you know what the defining characteristic of humanity is? It is not our technology or our tactics. It is our stubbornness. When someone tells us we cannot do something, we take it as a challenge. When someone threatens us, we do not back down. And when someone kills 3 million of our people, we build ships like the Vengeance and we make sure it never happens again." He stood up, walking to a viewport that showed Earth in the distance, a blue and white marble against the black. "You are going to take a message back to your Empire. You are going to tell them exactly what happened here. You are going to describe the Vengeance in detail, and you are going to warn them that if they ever come to this system again with hostile intent, we will not offer surrender. We will not show mercy. We will fight until either they are destroyed or we are." "They will think I am exaggerating," Zelchris said. "They will not believe one ship could defeat an entire fleet. That is why we are giving you something." Chen nodded to Rodriguez, who placed a data crystal on the table. "This contains sensor recordings from your own ships of everything that happened today. Video, audio, tactical data, everything. Your Empire can analyze it and reach their own conclusions." Zelchris picked up the crystal with trembling hands. Admiral Chen walked back to his seat and settled into it with the weariness of a man who had seen too much. His answer came slowly, each word chosen with care. "Because we want the Kelvari Empire to understand something crucial. We do not fight for conquest or glory. We fight only when we must, and we fight to win, but we take no pleasure in slaughter." Zelchris felt confusion wash over him. In his entire military career, he had never encountered an enemy who showed restraint after achieving total victory. The Kelvari way was simple: crush the enemy completely, leave no chance for them to rebuild or retaliate. Yet here was this human admiral who had just demonstrated the power to destroy the Calvari fleet utterly, offering mercy. "You could kill us all," Zelkris said. "You could take our ships, learn our technology, use us as hostages. Why give up these advantages?" Chen's expression hardened. "Because we are not you." When your people came to New Hope, they had already decided to kill everyone. They made no attempt at negotiation, showed no interest in peaceful resolution. They saw weakness and exploited it with maximum cruelty. That is not who humans are. We believe in proportional response. You attacked us, we defended ourselves. Now the fight is over. Rodriguez, still standing guard near the door, spoke up. "The captain makes it sound noble, but there is also a practical element. If we kill you all, your empire learns nothing except that a fleet disappeared near Earth. They send another, larger force. We fight again. The cycle continues until millions more die on both sides. But if we send you home with proof of what happened, with recordings and survivors to tell the story, then maybe your leaders will think twice before attacking us again." It was cold logic, and Zelkris appreciated it more than Chen's talk of morality. The humans were not being merciful out of kindness. They were being strategic. Dead enemies told no tales, but defeated enemies who were allowed to live became warnings to others. "You want us to be your messengers, to carry your threat back to the Empire." "We want you to carry the truth," Chen corrected. "Whether your empire interprets it as a threat is up to them. We are simply making our capabilities clear. Earth is not defenseless. Humanity is not weak, and we will never allow another New Hope to happen." The Admiral stood and gestured toward the door. "You will be given medical treatment for your wounded, emergency supplies for your damaged ships, and enough fuel to make the jump to the nearest Calvari outpost. After that, you are on your own. I suggest you take the most direct route home and deliver your report immediately. Time is important in these situations." Zelkris rose on unsteady legs. His pride wanted to refuse the human charity, to spit defiance even in defeat, but survival instinct overrode pride. His crew needed medical attention. His ships needed repairs, and the Empire needed to know what they faced. "How long do we have before you release us?" 24 of your hours, Chen said. "Our engineers will do what they can to stabilize your reactor cores and seal the worst hull breaches. We will also provide you with star charts showing safe passage out of this system. I recommend you follow them exactly. We have deployed defensive satellites throughout the system, and they are programmed to fire on any Calvari vessel that deviates from the approved routes." The walk back to the shuttle felt longer than before. Zelkris's mind was churning, trying to process everything he had learned. The humans had been planning this for 12 years. 12 years of preparation, of resource gathering, of building weapons specifically designed to counter Calvari advantages. It was a level of focused determination that frightened him more than the Vengeance's guns. When he returned to his ship, he found his crew already being treated by human medics. The humans worked efficiently, using technology that seemed crude but effective. They showed no cruelty to their patients, no gloating over the defeated enemy. They simply did their jobs with professional competence. "Commander," Vrask approached, his carapace bandaged where shrapnel had struck him during the battle. "The humans have been very thorough. They have removed all weapons, wiped our tactical computers, and taken samples of our armor and shielding. But they have kept their word. They are repairing our life support and propulsion systems." Zelkris nodded slowly. "What is the crew's condition?" "Shocked, afraid. We lost many friends today." Vrask's voice carried the weight of grief. "The survivors are asking questions. They want to know how this happened, how we could be defeated so completely by a species we thought primitive. Because we underestimated them," Zelkris said quietly. "We assumed that because their technology seemed crude, they were inferior. We did not consider that crude technology can be just as effective as elegant technology, sometimes more so. A simple hammer can break complex machinery." He moved to the bridge, which was now crawling with human technicians who were installing new power couplings and replacing damaged control panels. The humans worked with the easy confidence of people who knew their craft. One of them, a young woman with oil-stained hands, looked up as Zelkris entered. "Your reactor was close to critical failure," she said in accented galactic standard. "Another hour and you would have lost containment. We have stabilized it. But I recommend you run it at no more than 60% power until you can get proper repairs at a shipyard." "Thank you," Zelkris said, and meant it. The words felt strange coming from his mandibles. The woman shrugged. "Just doing my job. War is war." But there is no reason to let people die from reactor failure after the shooting stops. She returned to her work, dismissing him as if he were just another piece of equipment to be maintained. Over the next hours, Zelkris watched as the humans systematically worked through every damaged system on all 3 surviving Kalvari ships. They brought supplies, food, water, medical equipment, spare parts. They shared technical data on how to operate the temporary repairs they had installed. They even provided updated star charts showing recent asteroid movements and solar flare activity that could affect navigation. It was professional, efficient, and utterly unlike anything Zelkris had expected. When the 24 hours were nearly up, Admiral Chen contacted him one final time. The human's face appeared on the repaired view screen, looking even more tired than before. "Commander Zelkris, your ships are as ready as we can make them. You have clearance to depart in 30 minutes. Follow the marked route precisely. Any deviation will be interpreted as hostile action." "I understand, Admiral." Zelkris hesitated, then asked the question that had been bothering him since the battle ended. "When you fire your weapons at such high velocities, do your ships not suffer catastrophic recoil? The kinetic forces alone should tear your vessel apart." Chen smiled slightly. "You would think so, wouldn't you? That was one of our biggest engineering challenges. The answer is in the Vengeance's internal structure. She is not built like your ships with open spaces and corridors. She is honeycombed with reinforcing structures, shock absorbers, and inertial dampeners. When the main guns fire, the entire ship acts as the recoil compensation system. Every bulkhead, every support beam, every deck helps distribute the force. It is inefficient in terms of space, but it works." "Crude but effective," Zelkris murmured. "That could be humanity's motto," Chen agreed. "We do not always build the most elegant solution, Commander. We build what works. And we over-engineer everything because we learned long ago that it is better to have too much strength than too little." He leaned forward slightly. "When you make your report, I want you to include something personal from me. Tell your superiors that the Vengeance was built by a species that values life highly. Every human who died at New Hope is mourned. Every name is remembered. We built this ship not because we love war, but because we hate seeing our people murdered. Tell them that humanity can be a valuable ally or a terrible enemy, but the choice is theirs." The transmission ended. Zelkris stood in silence for a long moment, then turned to his navigation officer. "Prepare for departure. We are going home." The 3 damaged Kalvari ships limped away from Earth, following the designated route exactly. Behind them, the Vengeance maintained its vigil, guns trained on their departing forms until they cleared the system boundary. Only when they activated their faster-than-light drives and jumped away did the human battleship stand down from combat alert. Inside his cramped quarters, Zelkris began composing his report. He knew it would not be well received. Admirals who lost entire fleets were not usually rewarded. But he had to tell the truth. The Empire needed to understand what they faced. He started with the facts: ship counts, weapon capabilities, tactical performance. Then he moved to analysis: human technology, strategic thinking, defensive capabilities. Finally, he reached the hardest part: recommendations. Zelkris wrote slowly, choosing each word with care. He recommended immediate cessation of hostilities with Earth. He advised against any retaliatory strikes. He suggested opening diplomatic channels to negotiate a peace treaty. And he warned in the strongest possible terms that underestimating humanity again would lead to disaster. He knew most of his superiors would ignore his advice. The Empire had never backed down from a challenge. Pride and tradition demanded they respond to this defeat with overwhelming force. The council chamber of the Kalvari High Command was a monument to imperial power, carved from a single crystal formation deep beneath the capital city. It glittered with refracted light from 1,000 carefully placed luminaries. Here the 12 supreme commanders gathered to decide the fate of entire civilizations. And here Commander Zelkris stood before them, knowing that his career and possibly his life hung on how the next hour unfolded. Supreme Commander Thravix, eldest of the council and leader of the Imperial Navy for 40 years, sat at the center position on the elevated platform. His carapace bore the scars of countless battles, and his 4 eyes regarded Zelkris with cold calculation. "We have reviewed your report, Commander. We have examined the sensor data. We have debated your recommendations." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "Your conclusions are unacceptable." Zelkris had expected this, but hearing the words still sent a chill through his body. Supreme Commander, I witnessed the engagement personally. The human vessel demonstrated capabilities far exceeding anything we have encountered before. Their weapons penetrated our shields as if they did not exist. Their armor withstood sustained fire from 18 ships without significant damage. And their tactical awareness was flawless. They anticipated our every move. They ambushed you, another council member interrupted. They had time to prepare to choose the battlefield. Under different circumstances, with proper intelligence and planning, the outcome would be different. No, Supreme Commander Vrelet, Zelkris said carefully, using the council member's name to show proper deference. It would not. I have spent the journey home analyzing every moment of that battle. The humans did not simply win because of surprise. They won because they designed their vessel specifically to counter our advantages. Every system, every weapon, every defensive measure was optimized to defeat Calvari technology. Thravix's mandibles clicked in irritation. You speak as if these humans are military geniuses. They are primitives who barely achieved interstellar travel. How could they possibly outdesign an empire with 3,000 years of experience? Zelkris took a breath, knowing his next words would not be well received. Because they learned from us, Supreme Commander. When we destroyed New Hope Colony, we demonstrated our tactics, our weapons, our entire approach to warfare. The survivors studied every detail. They analyzed our plasma weapons and developed shields specifically tuned to deflect them. They examined our armor composition and created projectiles designed to defeat it. They even studied our tactical doctrines and predicted exactly how we would respond in various scenarios. He gestured to the data crystal still sitting on the council table. The recordings show this clearly. The humans positioned themselves perfectly to prevent our escape. They fired in precisely timed volleys to overwhelm our point defense systems. They targeted our reactor cores and bridge sections with unerring accuracy. This was not luck or chance. This was careful planning executed by a species that understood us better than we understood them. So you recommend we surrender? Vrelet's voice dripped with scorn. That we bow to these upstart primates and beg for peace? I recommend we acknowledge reality, Zelkris replied, knowing he was ending his career with these words. The humans have one vessel of this capability now, but Admiral Chen told me they are building more. 2 are already under construction, and they are designing even larger ships. If we attack Earth again, we will face not one vengeance but multiple battleships of equal or greater power. Our fleet will be destroyed and we will achieve nothing except more dead soldiers and wrecked ships. The council chamber erupted in angry chittering. Several commanders rose from their seats, mandibles spread wide in aggressive displays. Only Thravix remained silent, his ancient eyes still fixed on Zelkris. Silence, Thravix commanded, and the chamber fell quiet immediately. Commander Zelkris, your honesty is noted. However, you fail to understand the political realities we face. If we accept defeat from a single human ship, every species under our control will see it as weakness. Rebellions will erupt across the Empire. Our subject races will stop paying tribute. Our entire power structure will collapse. Then perhaps our power structure deserves to collapse, Zelkris said quietly. The chamber went deathly silent. He had just committed treason by Calvari standards, but he continued anyway. Supreme Commander, we built our empire on fear. We maintained it through overwhelming violence. But the universe has changed. Humanity proved that determination and innovation can overcome raw power. If we continue down this path, we will not be teaching humanity a lesson. They will be teaching us one. Thravix studied him for a long moment. You are dismissed, Commander. We will deliberate on your fate and the fate of your recommendations. You will remain under house arrest until we reach a decision. Zelkris bowed and left the chamber, knowing he would likely never command a ship again, but at least he had spoken truth to power. Whatever happened next, he had done his duty. 3 days later, the council announced their decision. A grand fleet of 200 ships would be assembled. Every available vessel would be pulled from patrol duties, garrison posts, and defensive stations. The Empire would gather its full might and crush the human upstarts once and for all. They would show the galaxy that Calvari power was absolute and unchanging. Zelkris was stripped of his rank and exiled to a remote mining colony. His warnings were dismissed as cowardice. His analysis was called defeatist propaganda. The Empire had spoken, and the Empire would have its vengeance. News of the coming invasion reached Earth within weeks. Calvari long-range scouts had been monitoring human transmissions, and they made no effort to hide their preparations. The message was clear. We are coming and nothing you have can stop us. In the orbital shipyards above Earth, work proceeded around the clock. The second Vengeance-class battleship, christened UEDS Retribution, was ahead of schedule. Engineers pushed themselves to exhaustion installing weapon systems and testing shield generators. The third ship, UEDS Justice, was behind schedule, but receiving additional resources to speed completion. And on the drawing boards, a fourth ship was being designed, one that would make the Vengeance look small by comparison. Admiral Chen stood in the observation deck of the Vengeance, watching the construction work with tired eyes. He had not slept properly in weeks. The weight of knowing that hundreds of Calvari ships were heading toward Earth pressed down on him like a physical force. Captain Rodriguez joined him at the viewport. Intelligence estimates they will arrive in 43 days. Retribution will be operational in 30 days. Justice will not be ready in time. So we face 200 ships with 2 battleships, Chen said. The odds are worse than last time. But we have advantages they don't know about, Rodriguez reminded him. We have fortified the entire system. Every moon, every asteroid belt, every orbital platform has been weaponized. We have minefields that can be activated remotely. We have orbital defense stations with railguns and missile batteries. And we have the industrial capacity of an entire planet backing us up. Chen nodded slowly. Have you ever studied Earth history, Captain? There was a battle once, thousands of years ago. A small force of Greek warriors held a narrow pass against a massive Persian army. They called it Thermopylae. The Greeks were eventually defeated, but they inflicted terrible casualties and bought time for their people to prepare. Are you saying we are going to lose? Rodriguez asked quietly. I am saying we are going to make them pay for every meter of space they take, Chen replied. And if we fall, we will ensure that Earth survives long enough to build more ships. The Calvari will learn that attacking humanity costs more than any victory is worth. He turned away from the viewport and headed toward the bridge. Send the order. All civilian vessels are to evacuate the system. All non-essential personnel are to be moved to shelters on the Moon and Mars. And all military assets are to prepare for total war. We are not fighting for territory or resources. We are fighting for survival. The evacuation began immediately. Massive transport ships carried millions of people away from Earth orbit to safer locations deeper in the solar system. Supply depots were established on distant moons. Backup command centers were built deep underground. Humanity prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. As the deadline approached, the 2 operational battleships took up positions in the outer system. The Vengeance and Retribution floated in the darkness like twin fortresses, their guns pointed toward the edge of known space where the Calvari fleet would emerge. Around them, hundreds of smaller vessels maintained patrol patterns. Destroyers, frigates, corvettes, and fighters. Every ship was armed with the best weapons humanity could produce, and every crew was ready to fight. Chen sat in his command chair, watching the countdown timer tick down. 43 days had passed since the Council's announcement. 43 days of preparation, training, and waiting. And now the moment had arrived. The sensor officer called out suddenly, Admiral, multiple faster-than-light signatures detected. They are coming out of jump at the system edge. Confirmed Calvari energy signatures. Counting ships now, 20, 50, 100. Still counting? Stand by all weapons, Chen ordered calmly. Launch all fighters. The Calvari fleet moved through space like a crystalline tide, their formation perfect and their discipline absolute. Supreme Commander Thravix watched from his flagship's bridge as his armada advanced toward the inner system. 2 human battleships waited ahead, defiant and alone. The mathematics were simple. Overwhelming numbers would prevail. It always had throughout Calvari history. Maintain formation Delta 7, Thravix ordered. All ships prepare to engage at maximum range. I want those human vessels crippled before they can fire their primitive kinetic weapons. Focus fire patterns on the lead ship. Once it falls, the second will surrender. His tactical officer acknowledged the command and relayed it across the fleet. 217 ships adjusted their trajectories slightly, weapons charging, targeting systems locking onto the Vengeance. They would unleash a wall of plasma fire so intense that no shield in existence could withstand it. The humans were fools to think 2 ships could stand against such force. Thravix had brought every available vessel specifically to ensure overwhelming superiority. There would be no clever tactics, no unexpected advantages, just raw, undeniable power crushing the enemy into dust. Range in 30 seconds, the weapons officer reported. All ships locked on target. Thravix raised his command appendage. On my mark. Fire all weapons. 3, 2, 1, fire. The cavalry fleet opened fire as one. The darkness of space erupted with light as thousands of plasma bolts streaked toward the human battleships. It was beautiful in its terrible way. A symphony of destruction that represented the full might of an empire that had conquered hundreds of worlds. The plasma wave crossed the distance in seconds and struck the Vengeance's shields. The barrier flared brilliant white as it absorbed the incoming energy. Alarms screamed across the human ship as power levels fluctuated wildly. For a moment it seemed the shields might fail entirely. Then they held. Damaged, weakened, but still functional. Impossible, Thravix whispered. No shield can withstand that much concentrated fire. The second ship is moving, his tactical officer reported. The retribution is accelerating toward our flanking squadron. Thravix watched in disbelief as the second human battleship suddenly surged forward with impossible speed. It was targeting his lighter escort vessels, the cruisers and destroyers that protected the fleet's edges. All ships in Sector 4 redirect fire to the retribution. Stop that ship! But the human vessel was already firing. Its main guns thundered, and shells the size of small buildings crossed the distance faster than cavalry targeting systems could track. 3 escort cruisers simply disintegrated, torn apart by kinetic impacts that released more energy than small nuclear weapons. The retribution did not slow down. It carved through the cavalry formation like a blade, its secondary batteries firing continuously at targets of opportunity. Reform the line, Thravix shouted. Do not let them divide our fleet. The cavalry ships tried to adjust, but the humans had planned their attack perfectly. While the retribution drew fire and attention, the Vengeance launched its missiles, thousands of them, each one a guided weapon capable of independent targeting. They filled space with white contrails as they accelerated toward the cavalry fleet. Point defense. Shoot them down, Thravix ordered. The cavalry ships opened up with everything they had. Energy beams crisscrossed space, destroying hundreds of missiles. But there were too many coming from too many angles. Dozens slipped through the defensive fire and reached their targets. Nuclear fire blossomed across the fleet as the missiles detonated inside cavalry hulls, ripping ships apart from within. Status report, Thravix demanded. We have lost 17 ships, the tactical officer reported, his voice shaking. 32 more are heavily damaged. The humans are repositioning for another strike. 17 ships, in less than 5 minutes of engagement. Thravix felt cold fear creeping up his spine. This was not supposed to happen. Weight of numbers should prevail. Yet the humans were fighting with a coordination and ferocity that defied expectations. All dreadnoughts advanced to the front line, Thravix ordered. Use your heavy armor to shield the lighter vessels. Concentrate all fire on the Vengeance. That ship is the key to their defense. The massive dreadnoughts, each one 3 times the size of a cruiser, pushed forward through the fleet. Their shields were stronger, their armor thicker. They could withstand punishment that would destroy lesser vessels. If they could close the distance and bring their heavy weapons to bear, they might turn the tide. The Vengeance responded by targeting the dreadnoughts specifically. Its main guns fired in rapid succession, each shot carefully aimed at vulnerable points. Reactor cores, shield generators, bridge sections. The first dreadnought took 3 direct hits and exploded spectacularly, its reactor going critical and taking 2 nearby cruisers with it in the blast. The second dreadnought managed to close within effective range and fired its spinal mount plasma cannon, a weapon so powerful it could crack a planet's crust. The beam struck the Vengeance's shields, and this time they failed, overloaded by the concentrated energy. The beam continued through and struck the battleship's armor. The armor held, scorched, melted in places, but intact. The Vengeance's return fire destroyed the dreadnought with clinical precision. Supreme Commander, a communications officer interrupted. We are detecting weapons platforms activating throughout the system. Asteroid installations, orbital stations, hidden batteries. They are targeting our rear elements. Thravix felt his confidence crumbling. The humans had not just built 2 battleships. They had turned their entire solar system into a fortress. How many platforms? Hundreds, possibly thousands. They were hidden, powered down. We did not detect them until they began firing. The tactical display updated to show the new threats. Red markers appeared throughout the system. each one representing a weapons platform or defense station that was now active and engaging Calvari ships. The fleet was being attacked from multiple directions simultaneously. This was not a battle. This was a trap. The humans had lured them deep into the system and then sprung their ambush. New contacts, the sensor officer shouted. Small craft launching from both battleships and from concealed bases throughout the system. Fighter and bomber wings. Estimated total, over 2,000 craft. Thravix watched as swarms of human fighters filled the tactical display like angry insects. They moved in coordinated patterns, focusing on damaged Calvari ships and finishing them off with missile strikes. His fleet was being swarmed, surrounded, overwhelmed by an enemy that should not have had the resources to field such defenses. All ships, scatter formation, Thravix ordered desperately. Individual captains may choose their own targets. Fight your way clear and regroup at the rally point. But there was no clear path to escape. Every direction led through fields of defensive platforms or into the firing arcs of the two human battleships. The Vengeance and Retribution moved through the chaos with terrifying precision. Their guns never silent for more than seconds at a time. Each shot found a target. Each target died. The Calvari fleet, so confident just minutes ago, was now fighting for survival. Ships broke formation and tried to run, only to be destroyed by hidden weapons platforms. Others tried to coordinate attacks on the battleships, but the human point defense systems shot down incoming fire with brutal efficiency. An hour into the battle, Thravix had lost 60 ships. An hour after that, the count reached 100. The survivors were scattered, disorganized, desperate. Some captains were trying to surrender. Others were attempting to jump to faster than light speed and flee, only to discover that the humans had deployed some kind of interdiction field that prevented FTL travel within the inner system. They were trapped. Trapped and dying. Thravix's flagship shuddered as a shell from the Vengeance tore through 3 decks, venting atmosphere and killing dozens of crew members. His ship was heavily damaged, engines barely functional, shields failing. Around him, the bridge crew worked frantically to keep systems operational. Supreme Commander, his communications officer said quietly, Admiral Chen is hailing us. Thravix wanted to refuse the transmission, to die fighting rather than face the humiliation of defeat. But he had a responsibility to his surviving crew. Accept the hail. Chen's face appeared on the screen. The human admiral looked exhausted, but his eyes were hard as steel. Supreme Commander Thravix, your fleet is destroyed. You have lost more than half your ships and the rest are too damaged to continue fighting. I am offering you the same terms I offered Commander Zelkris. Surrender now, and your surviving crews will be allowed to return home. Refuse, and we will continue this battle until every one of your ships is debris. You cannot have the resources to sustain this fight, Thravix protested weakly. Your battleships must be running low on ammunition. We have supply depots throughout the system, Chen replied. And our industrial capacity is far greater than you realize. We can fight for days if necessary. Can you? Thravix looked at his tactical display. 63 ships remained operational out of his original 217. Most were damaged. Morale was shattered, and the humans showed no signs of weakening. They had planned for this battle, prepared for it, built an entire defensive network specifically to destroy any fleet that dared attack their home. The journey back to Calvari space was silent and somber. 63 damaged ships limped through the darkness, their crews processing the magnitude of their defeat. Supreme Commander Thravix sat alone in his quarters, reviewing the battle recordings again and again, trying to understand where everything had gone wrong. But the answer was simple and devastating. They had underestimated humanity at every turn. When Zelkris had returned with his warning, the Council had dismissed it as cowardice. When intelligence reported human construction projects, they had assumed the activity was defensive panic. When their own fleet entered the Sol system, they had expected an easy victory against inferior technology. Every assumption had been catastrophically wrong. The humans had not panicked. They had prepared. They had studied Calvari tactics from the New Hope attack and designed countermeasures for every possible scenario. They had built weapons that turned Calvari advantages into liabilities. Most importantly, they had understood something the Empire had forgotten. Determination and ingenuity could overcome raw power if properly applied. Thravix's door chimed. He granted entry without looking up from his desk. Zelkris entered, his posture careful and respectful despite his exile status. The council had recalled him to hear his analysis of the defeat, hoping that the disgraced commander might offer insights into human thinking. "Supreme Commander," Zelkris said quietly, "I heard you wished to speak with me." "Sit." Thravix gestured to a chair. "Tell me honestly, Commander, did you expect this outcome?" Zelkris settled into the chair, his movements weary. "I expected we would lose if we attacked, yes. But I did not anticipate the scale of their preparations. The system-wide defensive network, the fighter wings, the hidden weapons platforms. They did not just build ships to defend Earth, they militarized their entire solar system. Admiral Chen told me they spent 12 years preparing," Thravix said. 12 years of focused effort, every resource directed toward a single goal. We have never faced an enemy with such singular determination. Because we have never given an enemy such motivation, Zelkris replied. New Hope was meant to be a demonstration of power. Instead, it became humanity's rallying point. Every human knows the names of the dead. Every human remembers what happened. They built the vengeance not as a weapon of conquest, but as a promise. Never again would they allow their people to be slaughtered without consequence. Thravix stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. What happens now? The Council will want retaliation. They will want to save face to prove that the Empire is still strong. Then the Empire will die, Zelkris said bluntly. Supreme Commander, with respect, we cannot win a war against humanity. They have demonstrated capabilities that match or exceed our own. They have industrial capacity that rivals the entire Empire, and they have something we lack. The absolute certainty that they are fighting for their survival. That makes them more dangerous than any weapon. You speak of surrender, Thravix said, but there was no accusation in his voice. Only exhaustion. I speak of survival. The Empire has two choices, adapt or perish. We can acknowledge that humanity is a peer power and seek peaceful coexistence. Or we can continue attacking them and watch our fleets burn one after another until we have nothing left. Zelkris stood, meeting the Supreme Commander's gaze directly. The humans do not want to destroy us. Admiral Chen made that clear. They want only to be left alone. If we can accept that, both species can survive. If we cannot, then I fear for the Empire's future. Thravix turned back to the viewport. The Council will meet in 3 days. I will present your analysis along with my own report. What happens after that is beyond my control. He paused. Thank you for your honesty, Commander. It is a rare commodity these days. Zelkris bowed and left. Alone again, Thravix composed his own thoughts. He had lost more than half the fleet under his command. He had suffered the worst military defeat in cavalry history. By all rights, he should be executed for incompetence. But perhaps his failure could serve a higher purpose, teaching the Empire a lesson it desperately needed to learn. 3 days later, the Council chamber was packed with observers. News of the defeat had spread throughout Calvari space, and everyone wanted to hear the official report. Thravix stood before the Council, his posture straight despite his age and exhaustion, and delivered his account of the battle. He spared no details. He described the human defensive network in full. He explained how their weapons penetrated Calvari shields. He acknowledged that humanity possessed technology and tactics equal to the Empire's best. And he made his recommendation clear: immediate cessation of hostilities and opening of diplomatic channels. The Council chamber erupted in angry debate. Some demanded immediate retaliation. Others called for mobilizing the entire Imperial military. A few, mostly older commanders who had fought enough wars to know their true cost, quietly agreed with Thravix's assessment. Finally, the Grand Imperator herself spoke. She was ancient, older even than Thravix, and her word was law throughout the Empire. Supreme Commander Thravix, you led our fleet to defeat. You lost 154 ships and thousands of crew members. By all Imperial law, you should be executed for this failure. The chamber fell silent. Thravix bowed his head, accepting his fate. However, the Imperator continued, you also saved 63 ships and their crews by accepting Admiral Chen's surrender terms. You brought back vital intelligence about human capabilities, and you have delivered a report that, while painful to hear, appears to be truthful and accurate. She rose from her throne, her ancient carapace creaking. The Council has debated this matter extensively. We have reviewed all available data, and we have reached a conclusion. She looked around the chamber, her gaze touching every commander present. The Kalvari Empire will not attack Earth again. We will open diplomatic channels with the human government. We will negotiate a peace treaty that respects both species sovereignty and territorial claims. And we will learn from this defeat so that we may never suffer another like it. Gasps of shock rippled through the chamber. The Imperator raised a hand for silence. This is not surrender. This is strategic wisdom. Humanity has proven themselves worthy of respect. They have shown that they can defend their territory against overwhelming force. Continuing to attack them serves no purpose except wasting resources and lives that the Empire needs for more important matters. She turned back to Thravix. You will not be executed, Supreme Commander. Instead, you will lead our diplomatic mission to Earth. You have fought the humans and earned their respect. You understand their capabilities and their mindset. You are the best choice to negotiate a lasting peace. Thravix felt a weight lift from his shoulders that he had not realized he was carrying. Thank you, Grand Imperator. I will serve the Empire to the best of my abilities. 6 months later, Thravix returned to the Sol system. This time he arrived in a single diplomatic vessel, unarmed and transmitting peaceful intentions on all frequencies. The human response was immediate. They were escorted by a squadron of fighters to Earth orbit, where Admiral Chen met them personally. The negotiations took place on a neutral station that the humans had constructed specifically for diplomatic purposes. It was utilitarian and functional, much like everything else humanity built, but it served its purpose well. Over the course of 3 weeks, Thravix and Chen worked out the details of a treaty that both sides could accept. The Kalvari Empire would recognize Earth and all human colonies as sovereign territory. They would withdraw from systems within 50 light-years of Sol to create a buffer zone. Trade would be permitted through designated channels, and both species would share certain technologies for mutual benefit. Most importantly, both sides agreed to a mutual defense pact. If either species was attacked by a third party, the other would provide military assistance. On the final day of negotiations, Chen and Thravix sat together in an observation lounge, watching Earth rotate slowly below them. The blue and green world looked peaceful from this distance, hiding the massive defensive capabilities that surrounded it. Tell me honestly, Admiral, Thravix said quietly, if we had not stopped when we did, would you truly have continued fighting until we were all destroyed? Chen was silent for a moment, then nodded. Yes, every ship, every station, every weapon we had would have been thrown into the battle. And if we had lost, we would have continued fighting from the ground with whatever we had left. Humanity learned long ago that surrender to an aggressive enemy does not bring peace. It only brings slavery or death. We are very different species, Thravix observed. Kalvari society is built on hierarchy and order. We value stability and tradition, but humans seem to value freedom and innovation above all else. Perhaps that is why we clashed so severely, Chen replied. Your empire saw our independence as disorder that needed to be corrected. We saw your demands for submission as tyranny that needed to be resisted. Neither side was willing to compromise because our fundamental values were in conflict. And now? Thravix asked. Now we have learned to respect each other's differences. Your empire is vast and powerful, built on 3,000 years of tradition. That is worthy of respect. Our civilization is young and aggressive, built on innovation and determination.